As we talk about research methods, we'll look at different types of research related to theoretical approaches. The first one would be quantitative, which is more numbers based. Then we look at quantitative, which is more information based. And then we have mixed methodology, which includes a little bit of both. And we're going to go into each of these a little bit more detail. So let's look at some qualities of quantitative research. So we look at what different dimensions we're going to look at, and then the answer as it relates to quantitative research. The role of formal theory is in quantitative research, we're testing that theory or verifying that theory. We use deductive reasoning to determine cause and effect relationships. The purpose of the research is to describe, explain, and predict. So we may be able to infer findings from samples to apply to a larger population. Our research questions are precise questions about relationships among concepts. Our participants could be few to many, and we may or may not use probability or non-probability sampling depending on the specific type of methodology. Our data collection is usually relying on closed-ended structured inquiries such as questionnaires, observations, or surveys. And then we'll use statistical analysis to really look at the data. The researcher's role in quantitative research is detached, to be impartial, and as unbiased as possible. Let's take a different look at deductive reasoning. So when we look at deductive reasoning, we'll take a theory and we get an idea from that theory. So we're looking at a theory that already exists, and then we're going to get an idea from that or a research question. We're going to develop that research question, and then we're going to use a hypothesis, and we're going to test that hypothesis or the research question that we derived from that theory. So after that, we're going to look at measuring and observing. So we look at closed-ended questions, surveys, stuff like that, to understand if our data really helps support or not support our hypothesis. So if we're looking at developing a theory, so to speak, we can take a different idea. Let's look at tennis here. So we're looking at tennis commitment or commitment to tennis. And what we want to say is we know that there's several variables that would affect tennis commitment, and we want to look at how they affect tennis commitment. So things like enjoyment, social support, involvement opportunities, maybe positive attributes of being involved in tennis. The next is social constraints, or maybe time commitments elsewhere. So we look at variables that also may take away or subtract from tennis commitment. Through this, we can identify a good idea of what tennis commitment really takes. And so we can formalize that theory with a pretty grand statement saying someone may be more interested in committing to tennis if they have these factors. Next, let's look at qualitative research. We've got the same image here where we look at the dimensions and how it relates to qualitative research. So in qualitative research, formal theory is what we generate and develop. So we don't look at theory that's already there and test it. We develop our own. In qualitative research, we also use inductive reasoning. So we look at understanding multiple meanings. Our purposes are describe, interpret, and contextualize. So we're looking at really the depth of information instead of the breadth of information. Our research questions focus on the what and the how. Our participants are often a lower amount, so few, and we look at them for specific qualities. Our data collection methods are usually unstructured or semi-structured inquiry, so we look at questionnaires with open-ended questions, and sometimes we even let the rabbit hole theory kind of take effect where we start one questioning and we lead to another. For data analysis, we look at the text or sometimes images and really look for patterns, themes, and stuff like that. And the researcher's role is really to be involved and collaborative with the participants or the group. Let's take a look at comparing quantitative and qualitative approaches. So to the left, you can see the different features of the approach within research. And then as you can see, the different areas are checked or marked. So as you'll notice, the only thing that they both have in common is number 5, which is description. So they both describe a situation in some sort. So qualitative approaches cannot explain or predict, and quantitative approaches can't look at how or what. Next, let's look at mixed methods approaches. So mixed methods limits the disadvantages and maximize the advantages of each of the qualitative and quantitative approaches. So a lot of times we'll call this triangulation. Let's go back to our little image here. To the left, we have the dimension, and then we have how it relates to mixed methodology. So within mixed methodology, we can look at the role of formal theory. So this is to test the theory or verify the theory, but also maybe look at theory development and generation. So it includes both. We can use deductive or inductive reasoning. The purpose could be to explain and or predict, as well as interpret and contextualize. So we get a grander picture, a more robust picture, I'll say. Our research questions could be precise about relationships among concepts, or they can center on specific things like what and how. Again, our participants can be a few to many, and we may or may not use random sampling. Data collections could be varied from predetermined and emerging methods, open and close-ended questions, observation categories, to surveys. Our data analysis methods could be statistical or text and image analysis. And the researcher's role could vary quite a bit from impartial and unbiased into complete involvement with the participants. It's important to remember that this is not always as balanced as the yin and yang as you see here. So often quantitative and qualitative research do complement each other, so you get a better picture, the more robust picture of the situation. But oftentimes it's hard to really balance them. You often lean more toward the quantitative or the qualitative aspects of this. So you need to be very careful on how you balance that and how you use it.